Hey guys, so thanks for tuning into my first YouTube video, and the title of this lecture is The Earth is Alive. So I don't mean it in a particularly spiritual, hippy-dippy way, but I mean it in kind of a logical way. So, for instance, when we think of our bodies, we think of our bodies as like our legs and our head and, everything that we call our body, and we call it alive because, like, clearly we are. But our body is like very made up of stuff that isn't alive. Like, it's made out of bones that are questionably alive, and like a lot of inorganic molecules and nutrients and minerals. Like, normally we consider minerals not particularly alive, but we don't make those distinctions when we think of ourselves as alive. We don't go like, "Hey Bob, are you alive?" And he's like, not that we would ever ask that question, but he was like, "Yeah, mostly the particular cells in me are alive, but the bones aren't, and my skull isn't, and like, so it doesn't make any sense, and we don't do it because with ourselves we don't create any arbitrary boundaries. We consider ourselves alive. So I'm going to take that analogy and go a little bit further. So, for instance, when we, let's say, breathe, we'll start with that. When we consider ourselves alive, do we not count the air inside of us? Like, the air isn't alive. The air in my lungs that keeps me alive, that's not alive. But the rest of me is. I don't think we normally think that. Like, we don't count the inside of our lung cavity as dead. And the same thing goes for the minerals of the earth. Like, at some point, the minerals, which are, soil, which has bacteria and stuff, but let's start it off as dead. At some point, those minerals became into plants. I'm talking like transported into plants, and then we consider it alive. And then those plants go into us. So like those minerals, and becomes our cells, which we usually pretty clear on that they're living. We don't argue about that. But those minerals actually then go into our body and become living cells. So the question I have is, where does the boundary, if we need one, start or stop? And why do we even need those boundaries in the first place? So if you look, let's take a step back, or a couple million, and like look at the earth as one big thing. Just like the way we look at our bodies as one big thing, we don't look at our bodies as an individual cell. Maybe that one individual cell, which is a life form, by the way, like they're totally equally alive and have their own life and purpose and job and, stuff like that. So we're not going to look at ourselves at the moment. We're looking at the planet as a whole, as one big system. Just the same way we look at ourselves as one big system, and we don't make distinctions between what's alive and what's dead. But what's literally going on is like the minerals and soil in the earth is constantly being transported. It's like walking around. Literally, it's walking around. In us, in animals, the air is constantly going into us, and the energy is in us moving around. So who's actually to say? I mean, the point I'm trying to make, very successfully making, is that those boundaries are actually completely arbitrary. So we could look at the earth as one big system that's alive. It has parts that we might consider aren't alive in our human minds, but the whole thing is like one big system. There's different types of matter that we would call inorganic and organic, but there's a saying that the earth was once molten lava, and now it sings operas. Brian Swim said that saying, and I love that because it shows like it's actually the earth that's singing and walking around and loving. So I think that's a really beautiful concept that we don't often think about. And by the way, I know this is Earth Day. I actually had wanted to make this lecture for a while, and I had no idea it was Earth Day. So when I found out it was, I decided to do this. But let's go beyond the Earth for a second, because this analogy can go further. Like, for instance, we could think of now the solar system as one big entity. And, like, the Earth is literally made out of remnants that didn't become the physical sun, but the sun is like shining on us and giving us all this energy. So who's to say the sun isn't alive? And then we could take the entire galaxy, that there's like energy coming from the center, I guess, and like we probably couldn't exist the way we do without the rest of the galaxy and without the rest of the universe. So in some way, this is the beautiful point. The things that we are, which is human, unless there's something else listening to this, we can do things in the entity that's us that other things can't do. We could look around and appreciate the rest of the universe or the rest of the earth. So in a way, like, we're a part of the earth. We're the part of the earth that's looking at our own selves. Like, we are the earth. The minerals, they're in us. Like, but we can look at ourselves and like appreciate where we came from. That's kind of one of our functions. So in a literal sense, we are a part of the universe. We are the universe that can sit up, the part of the earth that can sit up and look at ourselves and think we are gorgeous, or look at the sky and marvel. And that's literally the universe loving itself. And I think the earth needs a little bit more love most of these days. Maybe a little bit more besides just today. So that was pretty good for now. I just want to say one more comment. Like, I've had this thought too, which is like, if you look at the ocean, like the ocean's made out of little parts, but whatever we define it as, it's its own big thing. But if you take one cell out of the ocean, it's not the same ocean. I mean, one molecule or one fish or whatever we consider in the ocean, out of it, it's not the same ocean anymore. It's something different. So just like I made that analogy for the ocean, just like if you have a cup and you remove parts of the cup, like you remove the handle, it's not really the same thing anymore. It's different. It's a different cup. At one point it was clay in the ground. Is it still clay? Who knows? But the point I'm making is that, like, all of us are a part of the earth. Just like those water molecules are a part of the ocean and they make up the ocean, we are a part of the earth and we make up the earth. So I think the world can do with a lot less like separation and a lot more unity, because, I mean, obviously it's Earth Day, so I'll say a couple of things, but like, you know, this is indigenous wisdom, but when you affect something outside of you, it's affecting you. Like what we, you know, it's been said before, but what you do to the earth, you do to yourself. And literally, what you do to yourself, you do to the earth. So, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed. I will come up with other things to talk about. And thank you for listening to my first video. Bye.